And welcome back to the Good News Show. My name is Cecil Anderson, standing in for Dave Palmer, who's normally the main host of this program, but he's taking a well-deserved break for the last part of this year to celebrate Christmas and the end of Advent with his family. And I'm having a lot of fun so far. And I forgot to mention that Joe Loney is producing the show for the first time. So thank you, Joe, for doing that. I appreciate it. Otherwise, it'd be me by myself in the room doing it, and it's just a little less fun when you do it that way. But I'm super excited about our guest that I'm going to introduce here in just a moment. This is a last-minute addition to the show, but a really big blessing because, you know, God answers your prayers in so many random ways. I found out over the weekend that one of my segments I had planned for the show was just not going to be able to happen. It would happen at a future show. And I came into this morning thinking, gosh, I do not have a backup plan. Can I talk about Christmas traditions by myself for 30 minutes? I mean, I probably could, but would it be enjoyable radio for everyone else? Probably not. And then I saw an email from Dave because Dave being Dave, he meets all sorts of people. And over the weekend when he was at the Gift of Christmas Gala in Addison, he was emceeing the event, he met a lady named Ellen who introduced him via email to this lovely couple from out of the state who are just put out this Christmas album that I got to listen to little bits of and really enjoyed so far. And we're going to talk to them and hear all about their story and encourage you to look into their album yourself. And so I wanted to introduce husband and wife, Brianna and John Bellino, who are joining us both on the phone right now. I'm going to say hi to John first. I'm pretty sure the voices are going to be pretty distinctive between the two of y'all, but, you know, I want everyone to have a fair chance to introduce themselves separately. So, John, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Hi. Good afternoon. So how are you?
I'm doing wonderfully. And then I got Brianna on the phone. How are you doing, Brianna?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. And am I right in saying this is your guys' first radio interview?
Yes, it is.
It is.
That's awesome. Well, I am so excited that we get to welcome you and introduce you to our DFW listeners here on 910 AM. Well, gosh, I talked to Brianna a little bit this morning, and this is the first album y'all have ever put out, and it's called A Wittenham Christmas, The Story of a Child. And I want to get into the details all about this album and how it came about. But first, let's just talk a little bit about you all, because, John, you were cradle Catholic, and Brianna, you were a convert a few years ago, which I'm a convert myself too. So first off, welcome home to the church. And can you all, I don't know whoever would be better to talk about this, but can you kind of just talk about how y'all met and that faith journey to where you are today?
Maybe start this one off, huh?
Sounds good.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, we met at a music store, actually, in Southern California, which is where I grew up. And so we were really drawn to each other in our faith, largely. We really connected on that front. But this journey to the church really was something we did together, and it was an amazing experience. And so, yeah, I was raised Protestant. Like you mentioned, John was a convert. A revert back to the faith. And so it was really just into digging further into our Protestant roots, really, and digging into great books. We were in an awesome book club together, and digging into great books, church history, deeper into the scriptures, and it just started to reveal itself that the Catholic Church was the roots of where we had come from. So, so it really felt like just going deeper into the tradition that we had been handed. And it's been wonderful. We have just loved it every step of the way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I would too. Is it okay if I chime in here? Okay. Yeah, as a reader, I didn't really know whether God existed when I was in high school, and I was challenged through college and whatnot, and I became a Protestant. But I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day about how the Catholic Church to me was too large for me to see, and the image of the man who was Thursday, there's a character in that novel called Sunday, and Sunday is exactly that. He's too large to be seen. I feel like I kind of missed a lot of what the Catholic Church had to offer, and as Bree and I read through the ancient church documents, we began to see more and more of the beautiful depth and wealth that the church has to offer, and that was just so attractive to us that we couldn't miss out. So that was kind of the gist of it. Just a few. Let's do it.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. So that's beautiful. So I'm going to really quickly give out some information for people to be able to find out more about y'all as we continue to talk about your story, and we'll talk about this album. Again, I got to listen to it a little bit earlier today. I'm very thankful that y'all sent it to my way, but it's a Wittenham Christmas, the gift of, I lost my note real quick. 1 second. There we go. The story of the child. And, you can go to their website, wittinghamproductions.com, to either buy the album and watch a little intro video and just learn a little bit more about it, see the track list, which we'll talk about again in a second. But again, that's wittinghamproductions.com. And, I want to talk to Brianna briefly about, you all met in a music store, which I think is so funny, and such a cute way to meet, considering that y'all are musicians. Were you always into music from your early days, or when did you get into that and to end up in a music store to meet your future husband?
Yeah, well, my sisters and I all took piano from a very young age, piano lessons, and then as we got older, my oldest sister started learning guitar, and so then my parents got me a bass, and then my younger sister started learning drums. So the three of us were actually in a band together, and we went into the music store to buy a microphone for my sister who was playing drums, and John was working in the pro audio department, and so he sold us our microphone, and so then he just really became a family friend, actually. So it was a very sort of long, slow courtship style relationship as he became a family friend, and then he expressed interest to my parents, and then it kind of started that whole long courtship. And we were together, I think we knew each other, I think 7 years before we finally got married, but we had been kind of a couple for about 5 years. So so I think we're coming up on our anniversary of knowing each other for 24 years now, I think.
Wow, that's beautiful. And so, John, obviously you had an interest in music for a while, too, to be working in a music store. How did that happen? Was it something passed down by your parents, or from young childhood as well, or how did you end up there?
Yeah, interesting question. So I'm one of 11 children, and we're obviously growing up Catholic in Buffalo, New York, and I'm number 7 out of the 11, and all my older brothers and sisters took some form of instrument, trumpet, piano, guitar, flute. And so there's always music going around in our family. And so when it got to me, I was like, I just want to hit things. I became the noisy drummer of the family. I've, ever since junior high and middle school and high school, being in all the sort of orchestras and bands and wind ensembles. And then I went on and studied music performance at Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts. And then from there moved to Los Angeles and Orange County, where I met Brianna and her family.
That's awesome. And so y'all have been married now for a number of years, and can I explain how the music is working your way into your life right now? I think Brianna mentioned that at the evening she goes out with the kids and sings. Y'all are in, I'm going to forget, is it North Carolina that y'all are in, or is it South Carolina?
Greenville, South Carolina. So go out and sing. And then, but you also, John, are doing music throughout the day too. So kind of how is this working? And is this kind of the full-time gig right now, or what is happening with the Bolinos and music right now?
Oh, you want me to take that one, John? Okay.
Sure.
So John's in a couple popular local bands, and he plays on the weekends 2 to 3 nights a week usually. And on the busy weekend evenings when he goes out and performs, I usually take the kids with me and I busk or street perform on the streets of Greenville. And so that's been a wonderful experience, and that's how we're basically piecing together our income at this point. Through that, and then through our production company that we started back in 2001, we've been trying to create products that we can then, sell and get out to the world. So this is our first official CD release, and I'm also an artist, and so last year I made a art tutorial series, a video-based art tutorial series called Creating with Our Creator, based on the Genesis account of creation, and just really kind of we were initially made it for our kids' school, where I was blessed to teach art for a number of years. And it was just to try to help pass on to the kids, whether they felt like they wanted to be an artist, as a living or not, just to help them understand that making art can really help us understand what it means to be God's work of art, and how, as we build that relationship with our own artwork, we can better understand the relationship that God wants to have with us. So we did that whole series last year, and now we're on to this venture, and we're hoping that we have more music CDs on the horizon coming up in the next, hopefully, few months. So,
that's very exciting. So the production company, is that what it's called? Wittenham Productions, is that the name of the company?
Yes,
yeah.
Wittenham. We were actually. It was a little town that we went to on our honeymoon, was Little Wittenham And I was told by an English lady, you're not supposed to say the ham, it's supposed to be Wittenham. But we always pronounce it as Wittenham.
Okay, Wittenham.
That's how we know how to pronounce it.
Depending on how British you're feeling that day, you can say.
Exactly, yes. And my sister lived in England, so sometimes I'm feeling more British than other days. But the spelling, we've often found people can get a little bit confused with the spelling. So it's Wittenham. So it's, Wittenham.
Wittenham
Productions. Yeah.
There's definitely a few times this morning in my notes I was writing WH, and then I was like, no, that's not right. So Wittenham Productions.com is also their website.
Yes.
That's correct. Thank you. Yeah.
And so I like the name of it. It does sound kind of the title of the album, Wittenham, to be a little bit British, Wittenham Christmas. I'm going to say that wrong every time I do this. The story, I'm going to just do it by the subtitle, The Story of a Child. Let's talk about, this is the first album y'all are putting out together like this, and you decided to go with a Christmas album. I guess, John, do you want to talk about how that came about, that you decided this is our first album we want to release with our production company is a Christmas album, and particularly The Story of a Child, which to my understanding has a storyline and a theme running throughout it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, so Brianna and I don't know, there's something about Christmas that is so beautifully incarnate that I think that music is such an appropriate way to celebrate that in Christ's incarnation. And, Brianna and I, for so many years, have really been drawn to wanting to do a Christmas record. In fact, some of the songs that we have on the record, I actually arranged with my brother-in-law, Johnny May. We arranged it 15 years ago, but we never actually got to fully producing those songs. And I just thought over the past few years, Brianna and I, we've kind of recorded a few songs that just gave them out as gifts for our neighbors, and I just, for some reason, we just thought, well, here we are with our production company. We're musicians. We love Christmas. Let's do a full-blown Christmas record. And so we did. We pulled out those old arrangements and added some new songs, and then Brianna had some originals that we thought were really appropriate to Christmas time. And so that's kind of the story. So since essentially July is kind of when we had the idea, and so for that many months, July until beginning of last week is when we kind of released the record a week ago today, I guess.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, so I think that's most of the story.
And it's got on it 11 tracks and 2 original ones that we're going to play a clip of one of them in just a few moments. But the 11 tracks, some of them are obviously very, very familiar ones. You know, you've got What Child Is This, which was one of my favorites, Come On, Come Emmanuel. I was excited. It ends with Good King Wenceslas, and that is my priest's favorite song. He actually had asked us last year to learn how to sing it so we could carol at his, we go caroling at the rectory, and I'm like, oh, I just remembered I need to do that. So maybe I can use your guys' as a reference, or I could just play that one and pretend that it's us singing it, just mouth along to it. But can you go ahead and talk about, Brianna, how you all chose these particular songs and the order that they're in and why you chose them for this album?
Yeah, definitely. Well, what we found is over the past number of years, like John was mentioning, we've always been sort of wanting to create a Christmas album, and what's been just really feeling like it's been lacking. When I was young and we'd go to the mall at Christmas time, we were hearing Joy to the World. We were hearing Away in a Manger. We were hearing Christ proclaimed in the secular space. And over the past number of years, that's just been really so removed from the radio that at least that we're hearing. And here we are in the Bible Belt, so I'm thinking that we're probably a pretty good gauge of if Christ was going to be proclaimed on the radio, it would be safe enough to do it here. But we just really feel there's a lot of like peppiness and bright jinglies and a lack of depth. And so there's kind of this sadness that I have found that listening to music like that can bring up at Christmas time, because Christmas time, just like any other time of year, has a lot of complicated feelings, and for some people it's even more so, because it's really kind of highlights the loss that they feel in their life, whether it be lost loved ones or strained relationships in their families. And as we were pondering making this album, I realized, that's really the world that Christ came into. We kind of get this shining Christmas card picture of the Nativity, but the Nativity is followed up right by the flight to Egypt and the massacre of the Holy Innocents. And this was a time of great turmoil. And even in our world today, I know a lot of people are heavily impacted by the wars that are going on in our world. And so I just felt like by tying in to these Christmas carols they're all there, right? Traditionally, we've got the Coventry Carol, which is lamenting the lost children in Bethlehem. And so by starting there, it felt like we're kind of in a place to start from where a lot of our hearts are really at, which is a place of lament. And so then we lead into another original song that I had written that also references the flight to Egypt, just battling all of what's going on. A lot of people feel like there's this sense of government overreach, a sense of challenge in health, and all kinds of ominous things that feel like are happening in the world. And we really just kind of wanted to say, that's the same kind of world that Jesus came into. And so we don't have to ignore it in order to be happy at Christmas time. So anyway, so we went into that song, and then it felt like that What Child Is This kind of all of a sudden raises the question, seeing Christ anew, in the sense of, here we are looking at the darkness in our world, and now we're looking at a baby, here and now today, a baby was the answer. So, which has all kind of been a very interesting experience recording this album while pregnant. So then we lead on to, ultimately, the cry of the album seems like, O come, Emmanuel. Lord, come into the midst of our hearts, into the midst of our families, really focusing on the Advent nature of this album. That is to lead our hearts into Christmas. We don't just like, boom, after Thanksgiving, jump into happy peppy, especially as Catholics, we're like, there's this time of pondering and meditating, and like a mini Lent that we go through. So, so then I'm particularly excited. You mentioned maybe playing Evergreen Lady.
Yes.
That's the next song on the album, and that one was it was interesting. Sometimes when I write songs, they surprise me a little bit, and I find out what's really going on in my heart. So that song was really sort of about the story of my conversion, and it's based on a fairy tale by George MacDonald, who was a big influence of C.S. Lewis. the fairy tale is called The Golden Key. It's a short story. It's so beautiful. I highly recommend reading it to your children if you have a moment to sit down this Christmas time. But there's an image in there of a lady all in green, and that just felt like she sort of symbolized what the Blessed Virgin was to me in my story of my conversion. And then the second half of the song really sort of started bringing up all the challenges that I feel as a parent and my sense of inadequacy, and realizing that I can bring those challenges to my Blessed Mother, and she can help maybe take over where I feel like I'm lacking as a parent. So
that's beautiful.
So from there we go into the Little Drummer Boy, and that felt sort of like the turning point of the album, where now that child that I'm offering up to Mary is received in the sort of stable at Bethlehem, and just bringing our own gifts, and that our own gifts are enough. Jesus is happy with us just bringing him what we can. So from there we kind of go into the spirit of Christmas and a little bit more jovial.
That's awesome. Yeah, and some of the more some classic ones. I also love In the Bleak Midwinter. It's a very beautiful poem. I think originally by Christina G. Rossetti, if I'm thinking about it properly. In the Bleak Midwinter is like beautiful, beautiful lyrics. And then of course, Oh Holy Night. That's Dave Palmer, who normally hosts the show. That's his favorite one. Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and like you mentioned, we mentioned earlier, Good King Wenceslas finishes out the album. But I want to go ahead and play just a short snippet from Evergreen Lady. I listened to the full song myself, but I like to leave it, everyone wanting a little bit more, so they'll go and buy the album. So we're going to play a little clip from Evergreen Lady, which is an original song on the Wittenham Christmas, The Story of a Child album, with our guests right now. So we'll go ahead and play a clip of that.
Awesome.
Evergreen lady, mother and baby, how long have you warmed the hearth for me? As we all run from our homes, and we run back to our homes, searching for where our home might be. And Mother dear, have you lingered here only to wipe the mud from your little girl's tear-stained face? Since life's tangled tree took a hold of me, can it really be years I've been lying in your embrace?
All right, so that was just a short snippet of the original song, Evergreen Lady, which is really beautiful, and I love listening to the entire song, but again, I kind of wanted to leave it people wanting more, so you can go to WittinghamProductions.com to get this album, and I think you can get it digitally, and you can also get a physical album. Is that right, John?
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, awesome. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, well, go to WittinghamProductions.com if you want to gift this to someone, get it for yourself for Christmas to make your Christmas that much more impactful. I really like how you were saying earlier, Brianna, about how that sometimes Christmas brings up feelings of sadness, if there's been a loss, if there's just family tensions and difficulties, which is all too common. And a lot of Christmas music is very like happy, everything is not always the case. Jesus can weep with us too and be with us in those hard times as well. I only have a couple of minutes remaining with you all, but and I'm going to ask you in a moment if there's anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to. But I want to say thank you so much for doing this as a whole family, to kind of be putting out music and doing the arts in a world where the arts are getting a little bit trampled on these days. Unfortunately, the true and beautiful that we can have, and to bravely be using the gifts that God has given given you to put out beautiful stuff like this. So thank you for doing that. Is there anything else about upcoming projects or about this album that you want to just mention? I'll ask you, John, first, and then I'll leave the last note with Brianna. Anything else we can mention?
Let's see. Not really. I think just that, we really tried to come up with creative and fun and interesting and new sort of arrangements that are not just a typical old way of doing these Christmas songs. So, and we think they're really beautiful. But the other thing is just it's WittenhamProductions.com. So it's WITTENHAMPRODUCTIONS.com. Bree?
Yeah, well, I definitely would like to just give a shout out to our musicians, because we had a number of friends who they just really took on this project along with us as if it was their own, and they poured their own time into it and just really loved us through their incredible production. So I have to mention Joel Endicott, who did so much of the arranging and arranging of the strings and the orchestra and the piano arrangements. John Williamson on bass. John Schreiner, he also, he's been an established voice in the Christian music industry for decades, and he just gave us some beautiful piano tracks and mixed and mastered the entire album in a studio in California, and it's just been such a collaboration of love with so many people who have been working with us. So I just really want to thank each and every one of the musicians who helped us out.
That's awesome. Definitely. And
I have to put a little shout out there to my kiddos, because they also did they had their own little cameo presentation, and Hark the Herald Angels Sing. We got a couple voiceovers from our cute little kiddos, and my one son actually played a few notes on saxophone. So.
Oh, that's exciting. That's actually a question I meant to ask you all, is if the kids are picking up any musical instruments and eventually going to make more debuts on your albums in the future.
Yes, well, they were very excited about it, very, very proud of themselves. So I think there will be more in the future.
That's awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining the program, especially so last minute and across time zones for us. And I really hope that this helps you all get some more exposure for this really beautiful album. I am going to post about it in our local GRN DFW Facebook group, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show. So I'll put the links there in case you did not have time to write down how to spell WittenhamProductions.com. I will put it there in an easy link so that you can purchase the album there and follow along on their journey. They also have, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all those things. I did go on a little stalking spree earlier and got to see some of your videos and covers. I really like when you're doing some, Brianna, and you have kids in the background playing, and it's very fun. I think it's a lot of great. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Advent and a very blessed Christmas season. And I hope this album blesses many more people as well.